Welcome back to Donington Park, everybody, for our final afternoon's worth of Ginetta racing. 3 more races from the Ginetta Championships to bring you from a still very bright, very sunny and moderately warm Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. We're going to kick off our afternoon's action with the third and final race for the Ginetta Junior Championship. We've had 2 races so far this weekend, 2 different race winners, but very similar group of drivers contesting the race victories across both of the races. Is that a sign maybe going forward into the rest of the year of who our championship favourites are going to be? Yesterday's winner in the first race was Alfie Slater. He actually had a reasonably easy run to the flag in the end because Fred Green was busy fighting Scott Lindblom for 3rd position. Fred got the better of the R-Racing driver to become the meat in an R-Racing sandwich. R-Racing victorious in both races, in fact, because Slater won yesterday and Rocco Coronel, his teammate, was victorious earlier on today in the Red Bull-backed car. Fred Green was once again second, and Torin Byrne this time joined them on the podium after Scott Lindblom tangled with his R-Racing teammate Alfie Slater, the race 1 winner, midway through. So a bit of drama already amongst the R-Racing ranks. What does race 3 have in store for us, though? That is the question. Well, unfortunately for those 2 that I just mentioned, Lindblom and Slater, the race 3 grid is based upon the results from race 2. We'll get back to that in a moment because we've had a drama long before the cars have actually made it onto the grid. That is, I believe, going to be the number, I think that's Ethan, isn't it? Ethan Carney, who has had a drama. Yes, it is the number 53. Ethan Carney appears to have run into the back of somebody on the way to the grid. The cars are released from the assembly area, which is right at the top of shot, basically, down beyond the Melbourne hairpin. They then come up the hill towards Goddard's, around the final turn, line up on the grid, and then they're sent on their way on a green flag lap. Well, sadly, something has gone fairly catastrophically wrong for Ethan Carney. Long before he got there, there is significant front damage to the car. He, luckily, is getting out and appears to be more or less okay, but that car is going no further, quite clearly. There's a lot of fluid, radiator fluid most likely, on the circuit, and Ethan looks, well, about as frustrated as you'd expect him to, really, because that's his chance of getting out there in race 3 gone. He walks away in disgust from his wrecked car, and the rest of the field, I'm afraid, are going to have to wait a little bit longer now before the green flag lap can begin, because quite clearly, although that is technically just on the way from the assembly area to the grid, it is part of the racetrack that they're going to be racing on. Were we to be racing on the national layout here at Donington Park, that wouldn't be an issue. But we're not. We're very much on the GP loop, and so they're going to have to wait until that gets recovered and the track dressed as well before releasing the cars. There is Ethan, who continues to assess exactly what happened there. That's a very bizarre one. Now, the other question this raises is, who did he hit? Because that car didn't just fall apart on its own. He's obviously had some fairly significant contact. So somebody, you have to imagine, has some fairly significant rear-end damage. Because that car has gone very heavily into the back of somebody else, you have to imagine. I don't know if anybody's come into the pit lane as a result of that. But it would appear that's not the case. So someone sat on the grid with a rather dented rear end of their car. It will become fairly immediately obvious. But there's no one. Where was he lining up? That would be the big giveaway, wouldn't it? He was 18th. So the car directly ahead of him would have been Scott Lindblom, the second of the Red Bull liveried cars, due to start on the 9th row of the grid. So he's the most obvious candidate, although, of course, it doesn't necessarily mean it was Scott, because they would have all been quite close together. No, there we go, it is Lindblom. Now, the damage to the rear of that R-Racing car does not seem to match exactly the damage to the front of the Elite Motorsport machine that we've just seen being recovered, because the back of the car, okay, bit of superficial damage. Definitely the rear diffuser's been knocked a bit loose. There's a crack in the rear bumper, and the tow hook as well, which could be significant if it does need towing. But apart from that, it appears largely intact, doesn't it? Certainly he's come out of that better than Ethan has, that which I think we can all agree on. So that's a shame for Ethan and, yeah, for Scott. A weekend that started very promisingly with that podium yesterday. He was 3rd in race 1. He was sitting in 3rd position, partway through race 2, and then when his two teammates, Rocco Coronel and Alfie Slater, started battling for the lead, he tried to join in and sadly made a little bit of contact with Alfie. And now race 3 off to a dramatic start, well, before it's even started, really. Lots of spectators still here, which is nice to see. The quote-unquote main event of the British GT race has been and gone, and, well, we're certainly not seeing a lot of spectators heading for the exits. Most people sticking around for their afternoon's action. We've got still 3 Ginetta races, as I've said, and another TCR UK round to come, so plenty of racing to keep us going through the afternoon. There, the number 53 car gets... it's being prepared to be lifted away. They clearly can't tow it because the steering and the front suspension's very badly damaged. Notice Ethan hasn't taken his helmet off. That's always a telltale sign, isn't it, that a driver is not in the mood to talk, even to the marshals, beyond just the basic "are you okay?" question that he will, I'm sure, have been asked straight away. The answer to that appears to be yes, thankfully. So yes, big crowd on hand still, waiting around like the rest of us for this race to start. It shouldn't take too long, though. The Donington Park marshals and recovery crews are very efficient, generally, when it comes to getting the track cleared, getting damaged cars out of the way. So I'm hopeful it won't be too lengthy a delay before the race does get started. And... we'll be down 1, but that still leaves 26 cars on the grid. Now, 27, which we had entered this weekend, was the largest ever entry to a Ginetta Junior Series season opener. So the most cars Ginetta Juniors have ever had on the grid for their first round of the championship. So a big achievement there by Ginetta. We had Mike Simpson, the CEO of Ginetta Motorsport, in the commentary box yesterday. And he was very, very pleased with the way that things are going. Now, there's a lot of attention being given, look, to the back of Lindblom's car, because now there is a question of, well, the scrutineers will be looking at the back of the car to see whether or not that machine can go racing. And I suspect that, well, they'll have 2 key areas of concern. One will be, as we mentioned earlier on, the tow hook that may have been damaged. If the car does find itself stricken in a gravel trap or at the side of the road and needs towing, then they need to make sure that that is still usable. They'll also want to make sure that there's no bodywork hanging loose that may end up falling off the car or causing it to be brought into the pit lane under a mechanical flag. They'll want to try and avoid that if they can. Now, they're gesticulating that he's going to be pushed back, and I think that means he's going to be directed into the pit lane. So they've seen something they don't like on that car, and they're going to send it into the pit lane. Now, one hopes that he will be able to, or the team, our racing team, will be able to work on that and maybe get him out under a pit lane start. But they're obviously a little bit concerned that maybe some of that bodywork is going to come looser once the car gets up to speed. So yes, there we go. Our racing team member was appearing in shot with a roll of tank tape, and they'll try their best to get that fixed up. They've got a bit of time because, okay, Ethan Carney's car is now on the back of the flatbed truck and is being taken away. But there you can see the next issue is the radiator fluid that's been deposited on the track, as teams are now, I think, all being waved out onto the grid to have a chat with their drivers, notify them of what the situation is, because of course certainly anybody who was due to line up in the top 10 or so on the grid will have no idea what this delay is for, and they'll be wondering what on earth's going on. Ethan will be escorted back into the paddock, maybe asked to pay a visit to the medical centre just to have a quick once-over, but he's walking absolutely fine. He seems okay. Ginetta, again, as Mike Simpson and I were discussing yesterday, really focusing not only on performance and how the cars drive, but also making sure they're as safe as possible. And that car looks very worse for wear, but thankfully, driver less so. Scott Lindblom still in that number 8 car then, as it's parked in the pit lane. Carney's machine is now off track. But a little bit of confusion then at the beginning of this third and final Ginetta Junior race of the weekend. So Ethan Carney will take no further part in this race. Ethan, who was making his debut in car racing this weekend, only 2 years of karting. Sorry, second season in Ginetta Juniors this, of course, because he was running with Prep Tech a year ago. And making his Elite Motorsports debut this weekend, but only 2 years of karting for Ethan before he moved into Ginetta's, but was a regular top 10 finisher last year. There is Scott Lindblom, so his car has been brought back out onto the grid, so that's good news, and that is sensible officiating there, really, to get, well, whilst they had time, get the team to look over the car, secure all of the loose bodywork, and there's no reason for Scott to miss out on racing or miss out on starting the race from his correct grid slot through something that he will certainly argue was no fault of his own. We haven't seen the incident. We don't know exactly what happened, but he'll be very happy that he's at least able to go back out onto the grid with a car that's relatively intact and give this race a good go. So they've got the leaf blowers out to clear the fluid away from the track, and we are almost ready, I think, to get the cars released onto a green flag lap. Pole position then, Rocco Coronel, race winner in the race earlier on today, and you know, he had a slightly easier run over the final few laps than he might have anticipated, but before that had drove a really smart race, working well with his teammate Alfie Slater, who was in the lead at the time, and he made a move on Alfie into the Melbourne Loop just after a safety car restart, and that's what sort of triggered then the contact between Slater and Lindblom. But Rocco Coronel, son of Tom Coronel, former World Touring Car Championship race winner and TCR World Championship driver as well. He's done GT racing as Tom Coronel. He's done a little bit of everything really over the years, but passing that on now, his experience, to Rocco, who started racing in the Junior Buggy Championship, age 6. I know I joke sometimes that they start younger and younger all the time, but that is particularly impressive. He's well into his career now, over a decade into his racing career. Says his goal for the season is to finish top 5 in the Junior Championship. He's already a race winner, and after the first 2 races of the season, and yes, I know it's only 2 races, but he is second place in the points, 7 adrift of Fred Green, who's been Mr. Consistency. Fred Green with 2 second place finishes thus far, and Fred will be starting second for race number 3. Well, how will the rest of them be starting then, I hear you ask? Let's take a look, shall we, as the cars have now been released onto their green flag lap. It is Rocco Coronel and Fred Green, as I said, on the front row. R-Racing versus Elite Motorsport. It's been the story for the last year or so in Ginetta Juniors. Then Pace Performances. Torrin Byrne was on the podium in race 2, so starts third, alongside Elite's Joseph Smith. Ethan Lennon, another Pace Performance driver, is up there in 5th, with Max Cuthbert for company on row 3. Colin Cronin and Freddie Lloyd will share the 4th row. Row 5 for Alfie Slater, definitely one to watch. Is Alfie, the race 1 winner, with Noah Young completing the top 10. Emilio Del Grosso and Felipe Reich will be together on row 6. And the 7th row is Jarrett Clark. And the first of the Rabsport Mabundas, it is Tiso Mabunda, another South African driver, from 14th. Raul Zanzaren and Reeve Lake are together on row 8 of this very multinational grid. Scott Lindblom, the Swede, is next, alongside American Ethan Carney. Then Harry Bartle and Mallory Mabunda complete the top 20. There's Josh Henry and Katrina E, with Matthew Chihuahua and George Proudfoot Nolder, the Australian driver, on row number 12. Then towards the back, some of those who had issues in race 2, the 3 non-finishers, Felix Livesey, Josh Watts, and right at the back, Henry Cameron, all hoping to get a race finish out of this, particularly Watts and Livesey, who haven't finished a race yet. They both failed to reach the checkered flag in both of the first 2 races of the weekend, so they're hoping to turn their fortunes around in this one. Rocco Coronel would quite like to keep his good fortune from this morning going. He's carrying the onboard camera, which some drivers will tell you is a curse and some will say is a good omen. Certainly it worked well for Rocco in the race earlier on today. Noah Young also managed to creep into the top 10 for the first time in race number 2. He's carrying our second onboard camera and looks very relaxed, drumming his hands on the wheel as if he's listening to a bit of Radio 2 on the way to the grid. And he will provide us, I'm sure, with plenty of entertaining shots from the midfield. And on board with the 95 of Noah, as he cruises up towards the final corner. The safety car peels to the side of the road. The drivers are therefore sent onto the grid. It's a standing start for Ginetta Juniors, as we saw earlier in the weekend. very difficult to gain any significant advantage off the line in these cars because they are not the most powerful and they have a very, very long first gear. So notoriously long first gear. It's very difficult to out-drag somebody off the line, at least on the initial start. But then as you go up through the gears, you're probably getting into about third gear before you hit the brakes at Redgate Corner. So there is an opportunity there to gain a bit of time. But you'll see them fanning out, I'm sure, into Redgate Corner as everybody tries to find the ideal line through the first turn. There is Henry Cameron, who will bring up the rear of what is now a 26-car grid, and a dramatic beginning to proceedings in this third race. We haven't even turned a lap of racing yet. Is that perhaps an omen for what we're about to see over the next 20 minutes? Because race number 3 of the weekend, the third round of the Ginetta Junior Championship, is finally about to get underway. Rocco Coronel and Fred Green together on the front row of the grid. We look towards the starting gantry. The red lights will eventually be illuminated. Quite a long hold here, still getting one or two things together at the back of the grid. Now the 5-second board has been shown. Josh Watts actually is only just coming into position at the tail end of the field, but the rest of them are already accelerating away as the red lights have gone out. It's a good start made by Coronel then. Looks as though he's going to hold on to the lead. I think Fred Green will get across in front of Torin Byrne to defend second. Actually, no, Fred wants the outside line to try and carry the speed down the hill. That leaves the door open though for Torin Byrne, who was going into the gap and did not quite fill the gap in the end, so stays in third place. All cleanly round Redgate Corner. Saw Scott Lindblom in the background peeling out of line to try and make some early progress, but it is Rocco Coronel who hangs on to the race lead then, down through the Craner curves for the first time. Bit of a squeeze there towards the back of the top 10. That was Max Cuthbert, wasn't it, getting squeezed a little bit by the number 15 of Joseph Smith. Couple of cars out wide through the gravel trap, keep it all together. That's one of the Mabundas, isn't it? I think the number 20 of Tiesa Mabunda back onto the road, and there is a significant collision, I'm afraid, as they rejoined the circuit, and multiple cars have got involved in that. 83, I think, might have been one of them. There's another off at McLean. That's a separate incident by the looks of it, but that, I think, is going to be a safety car. There's a car rejoining the track, having, I think, cut the entirety of McLean's corner. The leading 3 getting away, but I think that will matter little because we will have surely an appearance of the safety car at the end of this opening lap. For what it's worth, Coronel, Green and Byrne are your breakaway 3. Rocco very quick through the chicane, too quick for Cuthbert, and he goes straight across the gravel trap. Alfie Slater is there. Alfie Slater then, having qualified or started towards the back of the top 10, is about to move ahead of his teammate into 4th place. This has been a brilliant start for the race 1 winner, and Alfie Slater does go 4th, bringing with him Colin Cronin, I think that is, isn't it? Levering aside, and yes, Cuthbert ends up all over the grass on the exit of the turn. That's unravelled pretty dramatically for Max Cuthbert. Here comes the battle for the race lead, meanwhile. Rocco Coronel defending there from Fred Green. There's no sign of a safety car yet, so, well, maybe those cars have been able to get going, or they're in safe positions at Starkeys. The race is going to continue, and Rocco Coronel has some serious defending to do, because unlike the previous race today, he's got no help from teammates at the front of the pack. Fred Green right in behind him is an Elite Motorsport driver. Then you've got the pace car of Torin Byrne in 3rd, so it's 3 different teams at the front of the field. No teamwork, no team orders. This is just a straight up fight between the top 3 finishers from the race earlier on today. Coronel then defends that position. We've got another one around. That's Noah, isn't it, I think, who's had a rotation. Noah Young. Through the gravel trap goes the 21 of Matthew Chihuahua. It's got a proper last race of the weekend feel, this, hasn't it, already? We are heading through Starkeys now. That's where the lap 1 incident was. And yeah, amazingly, we're able to continue under green flag conditions. Noah Young gets going once again, but there are quite a lot of wounded Ginetta G40s out on track, shall we say. And hopefully they'll all be able to continue. We are still waiting for a couple of them to come through at the end of that opening lap. They may well be pit lane bound. But in fact, only one, I think, the number 83 car of Reevy Lake. So it was Reevy Lake that I saw powering through Starkeys and driving straight into an accident, unfortunately. So down through the Fogarty S's come the leading 2, and that was Alfie Slater very close to the tyre stack. But where we've lost somebody then, haven't we, from that first group? We've lost Fred Green now. So Fred Green has dropped down the order to 14th. Something's happened to him. So this has been a truly bizarre race. It started in a bizarre fashion before the cars even reached the grid, and it's continued in that manner. There's an awful lot to unpick from this opening couple of laps, but Rocco Coronel, through it all, has managed to now hold on to the lead, a decent lead over Torrin Byrne, but Alfie Slater is in third position from 9th on the grid. The race 1 winner looks as though he's going to be a real threat for a race victory in race 3-2. Coronel then comes through, 1.2 seconds back to Byrne, who is 1.3 seconds ahead of Slater, but Slater sets the fastest lap of the race, and that was without any sort of real slipstream. So very, very impressive pace there from Alfie, who set the fastest lap of the race in the race that he won yesterday too. So he has shown this sort of speed already this weekend. 3 abreast further back. Fred Green, I'm hearing, just slowed coming out of McLean's. Now, I did see a white car going quite slowly out of McLean's. Didn't have time for all of the madness to get to the bottom of who it was. It was Fred Green we're hearing, and I guess has now got back up to speed again because he's still running in 14th place. So maybe a missed gear or a gear issue. Who knows? It could be any number of issues. What it was doesn't really matter in a way. What has happened is he's dropped down to 14th place. That's the big news. Race leader, though, Rocco Coronel, pushing on this lap now as he heads up through Coppice Corner, almost pushing too hard right to the edge of the road. I've noticed a lot of the drivers taking that very wide line through Coppice, which is a new thing, I think. I haven't seen that many drivers doing that before. Reevy Lake in the pit lane, I think actually heading to the paddock. Yes, Reevy Lake is going to be a non-finisher then. The leaders head through the chicane. They get so close to that tyre stack, just brushing it with the right-hand side of the car. In the first sector, plastic marker post being collected from the exit of Redgate Corner there. First sector then, Coronel was a 10th slower than Torrin Byrne, and then 3/10 nearly slower than Torrin in the second sector, so that lead gap is coming down. There is the 95 car, that's Noah Young's car with a lot of damage. That may be going no further. Absolutely astounded we haven't had a safety car out of all of that, but really good job by the drivers to get the cars going and the marshals to go out there and clear the worst of the debris. It's all getting very busy down at the bottom of the hill. Josh Watts is one of the black cars there, trying to find a way past Raul Zanzara, the Spaniard in the MKH Racing number 3 machine. Watts to the outside of the number 3 into Goddard, chops back to the late apex, and right across the bows of the cars behind. Henry Cameron is the number 11 for Fox Motorsport. Number 40 is Joshua Henry for Tim Gray Motorsport, and at the front of this group is Mallory Mabunda, who I was about to say is the surviving Mabunda, but actually Tiso is still going somehow after that what looked like a colossal impact on the opening lap, but that car is still running in 24th place on the lead lap. Right, deep breath everyone, we're about a third through this final Ginetta Junior race of the weekend, and Rocco Coronel 1 second out in front. Before it all kicks off, let's try and have another look, shall we, at everything that was going on at the start of the race. Right, this is the old hairpin on lap 1. The leaders get through cleanly, but keep an eye in the background. Tiso Mabunda there, the white car, goes off in the wheel tracks of Emilio Valentino Del Grosso. And as Mabunda rejoins, there's a snap of oversteer and bang, nowhere for Reevy Lake to go. The 70 car, that 73, sorry, of Harry Bartle also had a rotation. How those cars got going again, I will never know. Then at Redgate, we had another incident there. Oh, because a round had already gone at Noah Young. This is what happened to him. We're on board with Noah. And this is just a little bit of oversteer that caught him out mid-corner. Around he went, and the others, in fairness, did well to avoid him. Oh, well, largely avoid him anyway. And he took his hands off the wheel just at the last second there, just in case that impact ripped the wheel out of his hands. But yeah, amazingly, we've only actually lost 2 cars, from this race. One of them never made the start. Now, there is the number 15 car. That car, I think, is tested for the pit lane, isn't it? That's Joseph Smith. That front bodywork's come very loose. And yes, in fairness, he's peeling over to the left and getting out of everyone's way. To the pit lane he will head. That releases Jarrett Clark in the number 55 car up into 7th place. Then it's Emilio Del Grosso in 8th, and look there, diving out of line. The Red Bull car is Lindblom. Del Grosso looks to the inside. Lindblom could be the big winner here. He's taken the wide line into Redgate Corner, cuts back to the late apex, gets an overlap on the Italian-Venezuelan driver, actually, Emilio Del Grosso. And through, I think, here will go Lindblom. There's a touch down the hill. That's not a good place to be trading paint. Luckily, they got away with it, and Scott Lindblom has made his way through. Right, what's happening next? This is 4th position. This is Colin Cronin in the 75 car. He's got some loose front bodywork as well. Max Cuthbert is right behind him. And also joining in is the 67 car of Freddie Lloyd. Now, Freddie started race 2 from the back of the grid, came through quite nicely to finish 8th position, and he's running in 6th place now. Into the pit lane finally has come Tisa Mabunda. Not a huge surprise to see the number 20 car in, what's left of it. But this battle for 4th place then rages on down the exhibition straight. We're ticking towards half-race distance. Max Cuthbert thinks there's an opportunity on the inside. There wasn't really, though, and he realised that, ducked back into line. A lot of speed taken into the chicane by the 75 car of Cronin. But if you're prepared to drive at the edge of that tyre stack and not to flinch, not lift, then you can carry good speed through there, can't you, by skimming it. You can see it's left a black mark on the right front corner of car 75, but Cronin was able to hold on to the place as a result of that good run through the chicane. Cuthbert back on the attack, though, as they head up the hill. Look, goes to the outside of a defensive Cronin, who moves back over. Got to be careful doing that in the braking zones, because that could easily lead to a little bit of contact. Felix Livesey here trying to find a way past Emilio Del Grosso now. And they've got Scott Lindblom in behind them. That is Katrina E off at the chicane. Now, that car's going nowhere. That's well and truly beached in the chicane. I don't think the marshals will be able to push her out of there. So that may well require that safety car to make another appearance. Not good news if that's the case for Rocco Coronel, because he is maintaining a 1 second margin at the moment over Torin Byrne, with Alfie Slater actually still 1.7 seconds back, but safety car would bring them all together. These three can't get much closer, though, can they? Colin Cronin almost being pushed down the hill there by Max Cuthbert. He forces a defensive move out of Cronin into the old hairpin, so we know Cuthbert will therefore be quicker off the turn, but there's nowhere to go. He's got a face full of Ginetta, and so he has no choice but to give Cronin a push up the hill. The safety car is now scrambled, and so the battle will have to be put on ice. I don't think that Freddie Lloyd had realised that, though, and he's just scooted round the outside of Max Cuthbert. Yes, has to give that place back, and that's fair enough. Noticed at the very next marshal's post that the safety car boards were out, and so the race will now be neutralised temporarily. What a dramatic first half of the race that was, though. So many talking points. The Ginetta G56 safety car is released onto the circuit and will shortly pick up Rocco Coronel, whose lead will vanish, and it will be Torin Byrne in behind. Now, the only possible benefit here for Rocco is that he's got two teammates not that far behind, Alfie Slater in 3rd and Max Cuthbert in 5th position. They're both R-Racing drivers. They're running the more traditional R-Racing livery, silver with pink or green highlights. Replay here of Mallory Mabunda having a moment at Redgate corner. Skating out wide, did Mallory hang on to it? Yes, brilliant car control. It almost fishtails back the other way, but Mabunda, I think, managed to keep that pointing vaguely in the right direction. Goes through the gravel. Incredible super slow-mo shot here, exiting the first corner. You can really see the punishment the car takes as it hops and skips its way through the gravel trap. The others staying as far right as they can, because you never quite know where that car is going to end up. Even there, look, it's trying to spin around. But Mallory Mabunda, I think, managed to keep it pointing the right way. Yes, loses a place to Henry Cameron, but that could have been an awful lot worse. Brilliant camera work up at Redgate corner. So Rocco Coronel brings the field through. His car, one of the cleanest ones out there, you'd have to say. It already had a bit of a damaged windscreen, but that's not a huge surprise. That tends to happen because of the gravel that gets dragged out onto the circuit. That gravel then gets flung up by the cars as they go through. And, well, I'm sure many of us have experienced getting a stone chip in our windscreen on the roads. That's just one stone at very low speed, so you can imagine the gravel rash that the cars end up getting as they go through the gravel and it gets dragged onto the circuit. Now, Fred Green, remember him, he was running in 2nd place. Then he faded down the order, but he set the fastest lap of the race, 1:54.749. That is a decent lap time, actually. He's also into 11th position, so he's not a million miles away from the top 10, but 54.749, the fastest lap of the race so far. And so that car, whatever happened to it, it was clearly a temporary issue, or at least an intermittent one. There he is. The car looks absolutely fine, doesn't it? So I'm really mystified as to what slowed him down, but this safety car may play into his hands if we get 5 minutes or so of the hoping that he can bounce back now through the latter part of the race. So there is one of the R Racing cars. That is the Red Bull backed machine of Rocco Coronel, Red Bull Junior driver. He and Scott Lindblom both backed by Red Bull, hence the Red Bull livery, which I'm sure you've all noticed by now, but it is an R Racing car. It may not look the same as, well, that car there, 27, for example, 34 Cuthbert. You've got another one in there as well, haven't you? That was the 55, I believe, yes, of Jarrett Clark. That's the more traditional R Racing livery, the silver with the coloured highlights. Green for Slater, pink for Cuthbert, blue for Lloyd. I don't expect you to remember all of this, but by the end of the season, they'll be very familiar to us, I'm sure, those liveries. And R Racing cars, 9 times out of 10, you can count on them being near the pointy end of the grid. Some slight changes as well to the decals on the Ginetta Juniors this year. No headlights, but they've sort of changed the decal sticker that denotes the headlight on the front of the cars to make them look a bit racier, a bit more modern. But the Ginetta G40 that's been in use now for in excess of 10 years as the sort of entry-level Ginetta racing car, or it was the entry-level Ginetta racing car for a long time, back when we had things like the Ginetta Racing Drivers Club, the Ginetta GT5 Challenge. These days it is only used as a junior car with the introduction of the GT Academy machine 5 years ago. But the G40 always did produce good racing. It was a car designed to give good racing. It's not very aerodynamic, it's not super powerful. Really have a huge amount in the way of driver aids either, which is what made it a perfect entry-level car, particularly for juniors, fresh out of karting. So many of them say that it really does feel like a big go-kart, and they can drive it as such, and they race them just as close as they would on the karting circuits. And we've certainly seen plenty of that this weekend. Getting a second lap behind the safety car here. So the recovery operation down at the chicane taking a little bit longer. There is Felix Livesey. Now, we saw the MDD driver getting involved in a few scrapes earlier on. You can see he's had the left-hand side wing mirror bashed in slightly, but he has moved up a very impressive 16 positions from where he started. Where did he start, I hear you ask? 25th on the grid. So very impressive stuff from him. Also, shout out to George Proudfoot Nalder as well, because he's gained 12 from starting basically at the back of the grid. He was on the penultimate row of the grid, was George. So a couple of big movers who have picked their way through some of the trouble, avoided, seemingly, at least in Livesey's case, any serious damage, and are now looking to try and use this safety car restart as another opportunity to gain a bit more ground. I would anticipate we'll get a restart at the end of this lap. I don't think there's much more needs doing down at the chicane. Torin Byrne there, the junior class leader, which might sound like a bit of a strange class name within a Ginetta Junior Championship, but that is essentially the class for non-rookies, so drivers who are not in their first full season of Ginetta racing. An opportunity here as well, with things calming down ever so slightly, temporarily, to mention the Racing Line app. If you want to make sure you never miss a Ginetta race, check out the Racing Line app to get notified of all of the Ginetta races this season. And of course, as I'm sure you're all aware, you can watch all of the races live and for free on YouTube, and I'm sure those of you who've tuned in for this race will be very, very pleased you've had the opportunity to do so, because it's been a thriller so far. What's going to happen in the final couple of laps? It will only be a couple of laps of racing that they have left, I reckon. So Rocco Coronel bunching them up for a restart. He's got Torin Byrne and Alfie Slater behind. Slater, for me, could be the one to watch here. That safety car has brought him onto turns with the leading two, who, of course, he beat yesterday in that first race, which he won. Off goes Coronel then, so he's accelerated before the braking zone at the Melbourne Loop, which is fine as long as you get a good run through the Melbourne hairpin, which in fairness he has. There's much more of a gap between him and Byrne than there is between Byrne and Slater. Slater can't attack or can't overtake before the timing line, of course, but he can certainly get as close as possible to Torin Byrne's number 18 machine and try to maybe build up to a challenge into Redgate Corner. Out of the final turn they go. We've just about got time for 2 more laps of racing. Rocco Coronel has scorched off into the distance already. 7/10 of a second the margin, but Slater is forcing Torin Byrne to defend second place into Redgate Corner. Slater takes the wide line in and is looking, of course, for that textbook Redgate switchback to get the run down through the Craner curves. It hasn't quite worked though. It's still Torin Byrne clearly in second place as they drop downhill for the 9th time. But really, Rocco Coronel will be loving seeing that in his mirrors. The more Byrne defends, the further away the race leader will get. Again, Torin defends the inside line going into the old hairpin. as they accelerate uphill. That lead gap is going to grow and grow. Scott Lindblom there on the outside. Livesey trying to move forward even further. He's got an overlap somehow. I don't quite know how he got there, but that's Del Grosso that he's alongside. Lindblom's in there. It's all getting very close. They're 3 abreast into McLean's. There's a very touchy-feely stuff indeed. Are they all still there? Oh, maybe not. No. Lindblom gets turned by Livesey. No. Off they all go. Lindblom, Livesey, and the 25 machine of George Proudfoot Nalder are the 2 biggest movers in the race, both off the road and both plummeting to the back of the pack. That's such a shame. Meanwhile, Alfie Slater's gone second. He's found a way past Torrin Byrne, and Colin Cronin's tried to do the same thing. So Slater to second position then, having started 9th. Can he chase down the race leader and his R-Racing teammate, Rocco Coronel? Torrin Byrne all out of shape. He's on the grass, so is Cronin. Here comes Cuthbert. Cuthbert to the inside of Cronin, down into the Melbourne hairpin, but because Torrin Byrne is also defending, there's nowhere for Cuthbert to go. So Cronin finds some speed, finds some space on the outside line. That space, though, very quickly runs out. Max Cuthbert eases him over to the edge of the road. That opens the door for Freddie Lloyd in the Fox Motorsport car to get past at least one of them, nearly 2. The 67 car's got some loose front bodywork, but he's not worried about that right now. The biggest mover from race 2, the 67 car, is charging to the front yet again. One more lap to go then. Rocco Coronel's lead is 1.1 seconds. To be fair, he just put in an outright fastest final sector. There's a spin off the final corner, and that is Fred Green, whose disastrous third race of the weekend, unfortunately, is going from bad to worse. He will spin to the rear of the field after whatever that mechanical issue was earlier on that dropped him down the order from the lead group. Coronel then, as I was saying, purple final sector. That was actually a fastest lap of the race for Rocco Coronel, a 1:54.591, 2/10 quicker than Slater, but Slater was busy overtaking Torrin Byrne on that lap. Now he's in clean air. Might he be able to get within slipstreaming range and close in on his teammate? Torrin's third position, by the way, is anything but secure. Max Cuthbert right behind him, looking to make it an R-Racing 1-2-3, as out wide goes another of the R-Racing brigade, Felipe Reich there at the old hairpin. There is Torrin Byrne. Can he keep Cuthbert at bay? Max Cuthbert has never had a dull moment in this race, really, has he? He's been right in the thick of the action. Somehow now finds himself battling over a podium place on the final lap. Down the exhibition straight they'll go again. They run very, very wide. Freddie Lloyd taking a slightly tighter line. Will tuck into the slipstream down the straight. The lead gap is coming down, but I'm not convinced Alfie Slater will get there. Cuthbert couldn't be any closer to Torrin Byrne. He's pushing him down the straight. Torrin defends into the chicane and just needs to be careful that he doesn't have a poor exit. That's exactly what he has had. He's hit too much of the curb. The car gets sideways, but then I think there was a tap in the tail from Cuthbert, which robbed Max of his momentum. So it's actually Lloyd who's on the attack, going to the outside of the pair of them. There's a gap on the inside just about. There is contact, and Lloyd goes on the inside of the pair of them. Fantastic driving. Freddie Lloyd read the situation to perfection and breaks into third place, or does he? Cuthbert's trying to come back at him. They're leaning on each other. The door cannot be closed because Cuthbert is there, and Freddie Lloyd had to back out of that. Max Cuthbert will go back to third. It is going to be a double victory, though. 2 wins from the 3 races at Donington Park for Rocco Coronel. Alfie Slater charged after him, set the fastest lap on the final lap of the race, but came up 6/10 short. And Max Cuthbert somehow makes it 3 R-Racing cars in the top 3 positions. And Freddie Lloyd almost got into the podium places himself there. 4th place for the charging Freddie Lloyd. Cronin was 5th, and Torrin Byrne, that little slide through the chicane on the final lap, dropped him from 3rd down to 6th. Well, fantastic racing. Ginetta Juniors at their best, certainly in the final few laps anyway. It was a little bit chaotic earlier on, but that 2-lap shootout at the end was magnificent to watch, and Rocco Coronel won that race with his restart, really. If he hadn't built that gap initially off the restart, then this man, Alfie Slater, may well have been able to challenge him. As it is, Alfie will have to settle for a class win rather than an overall win, and that's still a job well done, really, given where he started that race. Oh, fantastic stuff from the Ginetta Juniors, and Rocco Coronel will be celebrating a double race victory here from Donington Park. And also with it, I suspect, the championship lead. So Coronel, the winner once again. It's an R-Racing podium lockout with Alfie Slater and Max Cuthbert joining him on the podium. Then Freddie Lloyd for Fox Motorsport. What a drive that was from Freddie. Colin Cronin was 5th, and Torrin Byrne will be disappointed, I'm sure, with 6th place. Jarrett Clark and Emilio Del Grosso were next, ahead of Ethan Lennon and Harry Bartle. Joseph Smith and Josh Watts. Josh Watts getting to the checkered flag that time in 12th position. Raul Zarin was 13th, ahead of Felipe Reich and Henry Cameron. Mallory Mabunda was 16th, ahead of Joshua Henry. Matthew Chihuahua Fred Green 19th after various issues in that race, and Scott Lindblom all the way down in 20th position. He's not had the results this weekend, but his pace probably deserved. He was the last car running, I believe, at the flag. We lost George Proudfoot Nalder, Felix Livesey, Katrina E, Tisa Mabunda, Noah Young, and Reevy Lake from what was a bruising but entertaining third race of the weekend. Well, how can we pack all of the highlights from that third Ginetta Junior race into a relatively short highlights package? Let's give it a go, shall we? It was Rocco Coronel who led the field from pole position, courtesy of his race to victory. His race lead was not going to be an easy one to defend. There was drama at the start, though, as out wide went Tisa Mabunda at the old hairpin as he rejoined the track. Reevy Lake had nowhere to go, and it was a sizable impact that I was certain would leave both cars stricken to the side of the road. That was not the case. Noah Young then had a spin, a bit of oversteer midway through Redgate Corner. It looked as though he got away with it, and then bang, contact from Ethan Lennon. Put that car into the pit lane with damage. Then there was a spin down at the chicane, which brought about a safety car. That was Katrina E. After the safety car restart, Rocco Coronel scorched off into the distance. It was a brilliant restart from the race 2 winner, leaving Torin Byrne to defend behind. His teammate Scott Lindblom, meanwhile, got tangled up with Felix Livesey and George Proudfoot Nalder, and they've all dropped to the back of the field. On the final lap, Max Cuthbert tried to make it an R-Racing 1-2-3, getting to the inside of Torin Byrne at the Melbourne hairpin, but opening the door to Freddie Lloyd. Max would, though, get back ahead of Freddie as they went through the final corner. It got very physical, but Cuthbert was able to break through and complete an all-R-Racing podium with his teammates Alfie Slater and double race winner here at Donington Park, Rocco Coronel, finishing ahead after an entertaining season-opening weekend.